Hello, welcome to farmfeltandglass.com. Today we're going to learn how to make a felted pumpkin. So we're making the orange pumpkin today, but we're also going to have a kit available with the orange pumpkin, the green pumpkin, the white pumpkin, and a turquoise pumpkin. So the kits we have available, we're going to have the just simple needle felted pumpkin kit, and then we're also going to have a face pumpkin kit, which is a little more involved, where you learn to do different faces. Really fun because it's endless what you can do, and I'm going to teach you all kinds of different techniques and how to make expression, and this can be carried on to other things like dolls, felted critters. It's just endless what you can do with it, and lots of fun. So just by learning the simple technique of a needle felting a pumpkin, you can move on to greater and better things. The kit, this is the full needle felting pumpkin kit, and it comes with everything you will need as a beginner to start felting pumpkins. So you'll have your felting sponge or pad, needles, every kind of needle that you will need, and all the fiber that you'll need, including a needle holder, which is pretty handy and nice. So it's really a nice thing to, when you're starting off, you don't have to worry about buying this color fiber, that color fiber. Okay, so for to get started to make our little festive pumpkins, we need to make the core or a ball first. The size of the ball is going to depend on the size of the pumpkin you want. So we could just do a smaller one, or we can continue to add fiber to make a bigger pumpkin, or we can change the shape of it to make a longer pumpkin. So to get started to make a ball, you're going to measure yourself out about a foot of fiber and just kind of pull that apart. And we're going to tie a couple knots in it to create a really nice steady, sturdy core to it. So with this Cordale sliver, it really wants to pull apart really easily. So we're gonna, when we tie our knot, we're gonna pull on the knot very close to the knot, like that. So if you try to pull on the knot too far away, get a bigger piece here, it will just fall apart. So if you're trying to pull out here, it's just going to fall apart on you. So you have to pull very close to that knot. And I'm going to do a double knot to start with. So I have a nice hard core to start with. And then we're going to wrap the tails of our knot around like that. And then we're going to start stabbing our little ball. The very important thing to do, and as a beginner, you really need to remember this, if you want to make something round, you need to keep spinning your fiber on your mat, okay, on your felting pad. If you don't, you're just going to get a little flat disc instead of a ball. So we always keep spinning and turning. And of course, watch your fingers. Don't take your eyes off of your project. If you do, you're going to have a needle through your finger. And these needles are very sharp, and yes, it hurts. It will clear your sinuses for you. Not a fun experience. I would have Band-Aids ready, because everybody tends to poke themselves at least once. So you can see I'm just continuing to turn it around and round. And I want it to be fairly firm. So this is a pretty small size for a pumpkin. It's going to make a pretty tiny little pumpkin. I'm going to add just a wee bit more of fiber on it. So I'm just going to pull a little bit. And it's easier to add fiber a small amount at a time than to add a bunch all at once. It's easier to add than it is to remove. So just remember that. So go small to add, and eventually you'll get to the size that you want, little by little. So I just wrap that around there. I'm tucking the ends in so it comes back to a ball shape. Now again, this is the spiral needle that I'm using. Very aggressive felting needle. Really does the job. And you should hear that nice stabbing sound. It's kind of like a crunch. If you're felting like this and you're barely poking through, you're not going to get very far very fast. You really want to stab it all the way through. And you'll get more comfortable with it as you go. Sometimes it's a little scary because the needles are so sharp. But once you get comfortable, you'll just be stabbing away there. So this is a pretty decent sized ball to start with. And what I want to make sure you're doing is you're really getting it, you know, pretty hard. And a good test for that. So this is a ball that's not felted very well. It's just a little too soft to add the rest of the pumpkin bit to it. So a good test for that is, does it bounce a little bit? So that one's just kind of, it just doesn't have enough substance to it to hold on to the rest of the pumpkin. So we're going to chuck that. And we are going to start adding the ribs to our pumpkin. Oh, before that, let me also show you if you want a long pumpkin. So they're kind of cute too, the longer pumpkin. So to do that, when you start tying your knots, just keep tying it and tying it so you'll have like 4 knots. Now you're going to have to start with a longer piece of fiber, probably 12.5 inches or 16 inches or something like that, so you can continue to tie knots. So how many knots you go is going to be how tall your pumpkin is. And it's just going to be the same thing where you wrap your fiber around, add more fiber, and felt. So that's how you make a longer pumpkin. So we have our ball ready, and now we want to add ribs to it. So these are the ribs of the pumpkin. This is real anatomy, pumpkin anatomy, they call it ribs. So depending on the thickness of each rib you put on here is going to decide how many you put on. So you can start with, if you have a really wide piece of fiber, you're going to have a wider rib. If you don't want it so wide, you can actually pull it apart. So then you have thinner ribs and you'll have more of them wrapping around your pumpkin. So those are different aesthetic changes you can make to your pumpkin. So for this guy, I'm going to measure my rib length. I'm going to take a bit of my fiber here, and I'm going to start at the top of my ball here and go to the bottom and then back up. So that's going to be about the length that I need for each rib. So I'm going to go ahead and measure it. So this is a 9-inch rib. So I want at least 6 of those pulled out. Get out of the way. Okay, so to build your ribs on your little ball here, I want you to take your fiber, lay it across your felting pad, and you're going to fold in the ends like this, and then you're going to fold it again double like that. So you have a nice strong amount of fiber in here, so it's going to keep your pumpkin together. So then I want you to take your needle and very carefully do some needling. Now, as a beginner, one of the things you really want to pay attention to is you don't want to continue to felt and felt and felt on your pad and not pick up your project. If you do not pick up your project, it's literally going to felt itself to your pad, and you're going to have to start over because it will be felted to your pad and you can't do anything with it. So always pick up your project every once in a while. So, you know, stab, 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 pull it off your pad. Okay, so once you have this nice little rib made, you're going to put it on your pumpkin. So to do that, you're going to kind of scrunch you can stick your finger in there and just pull that together like that. So you're kind of folding in the top. And then you're going to carefully hold it a few inches back here, inch back behind the top there, and felt that down real well. Be very careful where your fingers are. And then we're going to pull this all the way down. And I'm trying to keep it so that it's tucked in on the sides there. And I've got this same thing on this end. I'm going to tuck that in, fold it, and needle felt that down. So now I'm going to come up the sides to make sure that they're tucked in as well. So I'm just barely hitting that side. I'm not wanting to go all the way across the pumpkin just yet. Some of that will happen when we add the highlights and shadow to the pumpkin to make it look more realistic and fun. So both sides, do the same thing. Okay, so that's our first little rib, and this is what it looks like for the it's gone. So for the longer one, you just do the same thing. You measure the length up and back, so that's going to be how long your rib is, and then you're going to make 6 of those. Or 7, it just depends on how wide they are. But usually 6 is a pretty good number for the ribs. So you're going to keep adding these ribs. So all 6 of them get the same treatment. Fold, fold again, felt. And I'm kind of, when I'm doing this also, I'm kind of tucking this in a little bit. I don't necessarily want those out here like this. I want them more in the center. So there's another rib. And we just keep doing the same thing. Tuck it, fold it, kind of squeeze it down right next to the other rib. And poke, 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 poke. The other side, same thing. Down the side. And the other side. So you're going to continue to do this until you get your whole pumpkin covered. So it's going to kind of look like that when you're done. Okay. So the next thing that we need to do is make our stem. So we're going to make our stem, and then we're going to color our pumpkin and inside here, make define our lines, add some highlight and shadow, and then we'll attach our stem to it. Okay, so now we're going to make our stem for our pumpkin. So this is kind of what we're shooting for. And just kind of like the ball, we want to make sure this part of our stem stays round. We don't want it to be flat. So if you're using your kit, you're going to want the lichen, the sunflower, sienna, sombrero, and bear colors out of your kit. So the main body of the stem is going to be a little sliver of your sunflower. So the length that you pull out is going to determine how long your stem is. So if you want a little wee stem, a smaller stem, then you're not going to want as much fiber. If you want a thick fat stem, then of course you're going to add more fiber. So a little sliver each of the green, the lichen, and the sunflower. And then just to add some color depth to it, we're going to add a tiny little bit of the sombrero. It's just really not that much. You'll be surprised in needle felting how little fiber you need to make a difference on different shading and stuff like that. So I'm just going to pull this out on top of here in 3 or 4 different places. So I'm actually putting the fiber down, holding it and pulling it, stretching it. So I'm not using a lot of it. So if you're going like this, this is going to be too much. You just want a tiny little bit, and you're what we're calling kind of drafting it out. So I'm also going to do a little of the sienna color with that as well. Just slightly different, more of a reddish brown color. same way. So now we have our color ready. So we're going to actually twist this to encourage us to get it to be a nice stem shape. And then now all your colors are nice and striated across your pumpkin. So you kind of have to hold it down with both hands here. If you want, sometimes what I'll do when I'm felting is I'll have extra needles ready to use. And I'll actually use them to hold down bits and pieces of my project so that I'm going to be less likely to catch my fingers. So that's kind of a good technique to use if you're afraid you're making something really small or delicate and your fingers are just right there next to it. This will help you just kind of tag it down. And then you're going to felt that. So remember what I said about when you're felting, two things with the stem. You have to keep turning it to keep it round, and you need to pick it up. See how it wanted to stick to it? So I'm just going to tack my placeholders back down there. So you're going to keep doing this for a while till you get a nice thick stem. So if I just kept doing this on the same side and not flipping it, what I'm going to get is a very flat stem, which is just not really going to work for us. You know, that just doesn't really look right. So you need to keep making it, spinning it around. So we'll chuck that. Now once you get it so that it's trying to stay together, then you don't need the placeholders anymore. You can just go to town and sometimes I'll just roll it across my felting surface. And so you're going to keep doing that till it gets nice and strong. Every once in a while I'll just kind of retwist it. And you want to see the fiber coming through the other side. It's hard to see, I'm sure, on the camera, but it's starting to get fuzzy, where you can actually see that the hair on this side's going through to the other side, and it's all trying to get knotted together, which is basically what felting is. So you're knotting all the fibers together, whether it be wet felting or needle felting. Keep spinning and always picking up your project so it doesn't stick to your sponge. So once you get a fairly thick stem here, we're going to take a second and roll it in our hands like this. So that's going to smooth it out. And this actually does felt it a little bit. The oils in your hands will almost like wet felt it. So see how smooth that is now? So that's kind of nice. Oh, I got a little piece of Angelina in here. Bonus! So now how do we get this cute little end here like this? Kind of the little pumpkin end on the stem there. The handle for the pumpkin. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull apart this fiber so it's going all the way around the whole bit of the stem there. So you don't want to just pull it like that. You want to pull it so it's going all the way around. And then you're going to tuck these in. Just kind of roll it and tuck it in. And this is where your little placeholder is going to really help. So take another needle and just kind of hold it down there for a bit. And you're going to kind of go around in a circle. And you can use your needle to guide and kind of tuck the fiber where you want it to go. And just remember, wherever you're poking is where it's shrinking. Oops, see, it got pretty stuck there. Always pick it up. And so I'm just going to continue to shape this. So now I have it on its side, so I can kind of spin it like this and shape that top. Every once in a while I'll give it a poke down the center here. And pick it up like this and go around as well. Wherever you're poking, you're changing the shape. So you're kind of making it shrink. So here, I kind of want to get rid of this right here, this bump here, and I want to define this right here. So by poking it where I want it to change the shape, that's going to happen. So you see now it changed that for me. It defined that there. So I'm going to go a little bit more. I think I like that, and I'm going to take a little bit of this really dark fiber. This is bear color. I guess it is kind of a good black bear color. And I just kind of twisted it up. I made myself, it's almost kind of like if you were spinning a yarn, just kind of twist it, give it a little twist. And I'm going to kind of wrap it around here and tuck it in. So it's going to create kind of like a half moon shape. See, it's half moon here. And it just gives it a little more depth. Okay, so that's our stem. So we're going to set that aside for a minute. Now, if you're in one of the next tutorials, we're going to do a face pumpkin. So kind of like these guys here, the little faces. So when you're doing the face pumpkin, you're going to want to watch this video first to get through the pumpkin part. This is where when you get the stem made, you're going to stop here and put your face on your pumpkin, and then come back and put your stem and whatnot on. So this is a good stopping point for if you're making the face pumpkin, and then go to the face tutorial to start the face on your pumpkin. Okay, so now we're going to add our decorative shadow and highlight and add depth to our pumpkin. So I have two different pumpkins here. This one I actually needled each one of the ribs here to tighten them down. It does kind of change the shape of it a little bit, but it will make it more secure. But if you want it to be more fluffy and kind of chubbier, then you can just add the decoration to the original ribs that we have without poking them. So if you know your pumpkin's going to get played with and thrown around or whatnot, you may want to secure your ribs a little bit more. If it's just decorative and you think it's going to be delicately handled, then you can leave it more fluffy like this. So to do your ribs, we just pulled a tiny little bit of the color of fox color off of our piece of roving here. And I want it to be really thin. So I'm going to just kind of roll it on my damp sponge. And you're going to place it right in the center of your rib there. And felt it down on each end. And then just go down the center where it is. So you're going to do that for each one of your ribs. So again, you take a little sliver, it's just not that much fiber at all, and rub it on your sponge to give it a nice secure shape there. And attach it on both ends. Stick it right in the middle of your rib there. So you're going to do that for in between each one of your ribs. So then what we have is it's going to look like that. Okay. So now let's put some highlight and shadow on our pumpkin to really give it some depth. So to do that, I'm going to add some more of this fox, and I'm just going to hold it down at the top here, just the tiniest, I mean, it's just a tiny little bit, and pull it down. It's so subtle, but it really makes a big difference. And kind of go on each one of your ribs. And then I'm going to take the lichen color, and I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to come up from the bottom, so it's going to kind of be more the shadow bit. Oh. So this is where you want to needle felt very delicate. So before I was talking about when you're trying to change the shape of something, you're really punching and you're punching straight down. Punch, punch, punch. But when you're trying to add color, you're not trying to change the shape. So you want to be very delicate. So I encourage people to kind of go at kind of like an angle, and it's more of a poke than a punch. So it's not nearly as aggressive. And you're just trying to get that color on there. So if I really poked, I'd be changing the shape of my rib. Instead of it would make it flat instead of fluffy or stick out like a rib. So just delicately going around and trying to get that shadow and highlight color in. And again, you're at an angle, and it's more of a poke than it is a stab. So it does make a pretty good difference. So here's the pumpkin without any highlight or color to it, defining the ribs, and then here's one with it, and it really just makes it pop out a little bit more, make it look more like a pumpkin. And then so now we're going to add the stem. Let's see. Use the littler stem. I got a littler pumpkin. So you want to pull out your fiber around the stem. You don't want to attach it like that. You want to pull it out so it's going covering around the whole stem there. And you're going to plop that down on here. Now if you have too much fiber out here, just pull some of it off. If it's covering up too much of your pumpkin, just pull some of it off. So stick that guy on there, and you're going to felt that down. So go all the way around the base of that stem, get it really secure. Okay. Then you just kind of sure everything up, make sure everything's defined and your decorations on there, your colors on there. So that looks good. So to finish it off, we're going to put some little curly cues on the top here. So pumpkins, when they're growing, they have what we call tendrils, little curly bits that attach itself to vines and stuff like that to help the pumpkin grow and get off the ground if it needs to. So these are they're just little mohair curls. So you'll get some of this in your kit if you're using the kit. And you're going to pull it apart just a wee bit in the middle of each one of them and stick that down. Just stab. And you want these little tendrils to kind of hang out. So they're like the little vine tendrils. So just take one little mohair lock and divide it a little bit in the center, like that, and stick it down near the base of the, so you're just felting down that center of that mohair lock. So how cute is that? Just that quick, we made a little pumpkin. There's also other color kits you can get on the website. We have a white pumpkin and a kind of a turquoise pumpkin and a green pumpkin that's available. So, of course, you can make it whatever color you want. All right, there's your pumpkin.